We will start the webinar soon. Okay. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Rahayu. Good morning. We are delighted to welcome you to webinar, Remaining Challenges in Education, Highlights from the Academia, hosted by the Agency for Research and Development and Book Affair, Ministry of Education and Culture, Indonesia. I'm Danas Moro Brahmantio, your Master of Ceremony, and also will be the moderator for today's seminar. And allow me to thank everyone here for taking time to attend our remarkable event. To start our webinar, I will be sharing our today's agenda. First, opening remarks from Ministry of Education and Culture Indonesia, introduction to our keynote speaker from Global Partnership for Education, or GPE, presentations from Center for Policy Research, Ministry of Education and Culture Indonesia, Head of Mantawai Island Education and Culture Office, also from a senior high school teacher from West Java. And then we have a keynote speech from Professor Hanusek, Bapak Hanusek, followed with a panel discussion, and finally the closing session. Those are the agenda which will be presented soon. Today's webinar will be delivered in English. Please mute your microphone during webinar, unmute only when you are requested. Click the raise hand feature on your, or write down your question on the chat box. Dear audiences, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Acting Head of the Agency for Research and Development and Book Affair, Ministry of Education and Culture, Indonesia, Mr. Totok Suprayitno for the opening remarks. Please, Mr. Totok.
Thank you, Danas. I hope this is not so formal. Yeah, we talk with very relaxed dialogue. Well, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. Especially, I would like to welcome Professor Hanusek for this seminar. I would like to thank your time, your thoughts on these very important issues. I believe many of us have your name, your reputation. So actually your name and reputation proceed yourself. And I would like also thank you for to Javier, who is the one who connect us with Professor Hanusek. It was quite some time ago that he has idea to invite Professor Hanusek to have discussion with us in these very important issues on education. And frankly, we have had lots of discussion with Javier about the issues on education in Indonesia, especially when we are talking about what is remaining issues. That's actually almost everything is remaining. Especially we have problem with quality of education. Yes, we have some successful story about providing access to our children in terms of providing a lot of schooling to make everybody want to go to school, especially in the primary and junior secondary. That's a basic education. But for many years, we are lagging in the quality of education. So the current policy on education, we are more likely to focus on education, and when we are talking about the quality, then it is not really what we mean by quality. The accountability on quality usually is based on the administrative compliance. How many laboratory, how many teacher that is holding bachelor degree, and this kind of indicators. Not much really on the what is the quality of learning of our students. What is the achievement of students? Only recently, then we are going to focus on that. And as far as I know, that Professor Hanusek is very much concerned on these accountability issues, especially with respect to student achievement, or student learning outcomes. And this is exactly what we are would like to focus on the current policy. And thank you, Javier. Uh, you have been inspiring to us with your article when you were in the World Bank, especially with article that influenced somehow with the thinking of on education issues that we are now doing with, hopefully with visible policy that we are going to execute. Okay, so I would like to I hope that we have productive discussion. And once again, thank you, Professor Hanusek, for your time, for your thought on this very important issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Toto, for the opening remarks. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Javier Luc, Country Lead for Global Partnership for Education, to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Eric Hanusek. Mr. Luc, you're still mute. Please unmute. Yeah. We still cannot hear you. Sorry. Oh. You already unmute, but we cannot hear you. What's wrong?
No, we cannot hear you up here.
We cannot hear you.
No, maybe a problem with audio.
Okay. Can we, or wait? Okay. Okay, Mr. Luke, maybe you can rejoin the room. We suggest you to rejoin the room.
That means you ask Javier to get out and get in again?
Restart, Pak Toto. I think it's from the applications.
Okay.
Pak Toto, can we move to another session? Or
can we wait for a moment?
Yeah.
Javier to come in?
Yes.
Ask again.
With Mr. Javier for a moment. Let's see. Okay. Okay, Mr. Javier, you already in?
Now does it work?
Nah, okay. Please, Mr. Javier.
Perfect.
Okay, well, sorry. So
yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. Please, Mr. Javier.
Okay, so I was saying that I prepared like a very brief presentation, but I don't know if I will be able to show it, but maybe just let's go without it. So in sake of time and given technological glitches. So, but so I think I just wanted, of course, Patoto mentioned that somehow we have heard from Hanushek before, and he's now a fellow at the Hoover Institution in Stanford, California. He has been there since approximately 2000. Before that, he was at University of Rochester, and he had some other appointments in the academia. And before that, he was at the Air Force in the US. So he's, in a way, kind of strange Air Force pilot that ended up working in education. But I think more importantly, what I want to stress about him is how he has influenced the way we think about education policy. No, and I think there are like 4 main contributions that maybe we have heard about, maybe we are used to to ideas that he developed, but there was a lot in the making, and in many cases there was a lot of discussion and debate. I would say that his first more controversial paper was a paper published in 1986, where he made this intriguing assessment that education expenditure has been going up in the US, but education outcomes were not going up. No, and that sounds familiar. Maybe that was the very first time that this was addressed in the, plainly addressed. And of course, that created a lot of debate and a lot of discussion. Many understood his results as saying that money does not matter in education, when what he was really saying is what matters is how we spend the resources. No, so I think that's key, a first message. And of course, that created a lot of discussion that we still see. No, if you do a Google search on does mother matter, you will still find a lot of recent papers trying to address this or not. No, but again, the big point that he was making is that money is not the money doesn't matter, but is what really matters is how you spend it. Then the other big contribution that I think he made has been on the importance of teachers in the education process. No, he was, I think, the very first one that had the data to really pinpoint in a very formal econometric sense what is the value that a teacher has, what is the value added that a teacher can create during a school year. Now, he said something that became also very popular among the policymakers, that is like a good teacher can boost student outcomes by 1.5 years, when a not so good teacher only by 0.5. Of course, the difference may not seem huge, but if you take into account that the education process is cumulative, then it becomes huge. No, because a kid in a marginalized area will have bad teachers all his education career, while a teacher in a well-off area will have good teachers. So then, in cumulative terms, big difference appear. And of course, following that, it has become, I think, central in the education debate now that teachers are the most important publicly provided input in education resources, in the education production. Then the other key area where he has been really strong and giving us a lot is on the use of accountability and the importance of measurement, and has measures education outcomes to push for accountability policies to be implemented, and really to know what's happening. No, he has been a very strong advocate of international tests like PISA, TIMSS, in a way that they produce data with which the data we can use to assess what's happening, and also in the context of the US within the different states. No, and maybe just, I think this is especially important for Indonesia, that to have in mind that the US is also in a way a decentralized system with some centrally funded resources. No? So for the US, it has been always very important to assess what is the importance of the resources in education, but at the same time, create the accountability mechanisms to ensure that those resources are delivering what we were expecting to get. No, so in a way, those two issues, of course, with the issue of teachers, really fit pretty well in the Indonesian context. And I think the last point that I think he's recently more known because is on the issue on the importance of teacher quality, and not the importance of quality of education. He has had several very influential papers where he shows how quality is important in education rather than quantity. No, and he has pushed this push for quality has been instrumental in the quality agenda that now we see. No, now, for example, the Millennium Development Goals now focus on quality, something that was not in the debate 10 or 15 years ago. No, so I think his big contributions are important resources, teachers, accountability, and the importance of quality. No, so I think that's really how his contribution has been and how he had shaped the way that we think about education policy now. So I'm sure that, I mean, of course, I'm delighted that he is here with us today, and I'm sure he will elaborate these points with us after hearing from how the situation of the education system in Indonesia that our colleagues there are going to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Javier, for the introduction speech. Before we listen to our keynote speech from Professor Hanusek, our next session will be presentation from 3 speakers. Every presenter will be delivering for about 5 minutes. For the first speaker, I would like to invite Acting Head Center for Policy Research, Ministry of Education and Culture in Indonesia, whom will be giving a presentation about Indonesia education system, decentralization, and outcomes. Please welcome Mr. Ifsat Samjani.
Thank you. Can I share my slide? I'm still disabled to share my slide.
Coba lagi, Mas. Bisa nggak?
Oke. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Pak Toto, Javier, Professor Hanusek, Mas Danas, and other colleagues, and also the seminar participant. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Once again, thank you for having me here to present some of Okay. All right. Is it okay if I don't make it like on the slideshow? Because I think it takes time. I think my computer is a bit.
Yes. I think it's clear enough, Mr. Samjani. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I was given very short notice to prepare this presentation. I hope this presentation is still relevant with the topic we are discussing here. So I'd like to present about the education decentralization in Indonesia. My presentation would consist of these 4 areas. The first one is about education system and how the education decentralization in Indonesia is working and what have we achieved after the decentralization and what's next after this kind of governance reform. And the first one about, I think I don't need to talk lengthy about this issue. I think everyone has known. Maybe I just want to highlight 2 things about the education system in Indonesia. So we have a 2 type of schooling, which is the regular and the religious schooling under the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and the other one is that the management of the education, where in this regard the K-12 education under the MOEC system or the Ministry of Education system is decentralized to the local government, whereas the religious one remains under the central control. But before the decentralization was taking place during the New Order period, the governance of education was made of complex, overly centralized and fragmented structure. The Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Education and Culture share the authority to control the schools through layers of their respective local education offices. For example, the Ministry of Home Affairs has the provincial dinas pendidikan provinsi and dinas pendidikan kabupaten, and the MOIC at the Kanwil, kantor wilayah at the provincial level, and the Kandep at the local, at the district level. Both department has to share control of the schools at the local level. And but for the MORA, they still keep the vertical, I mean the central control of their schools through their their own layers of bureaucracy through Kanwil and Kandep, separated from the MOIC education system. And this arrangement has had created some trouble. For example, in the school planning and budgeting arrangement, the school must follow the layers of bureaucracy up and down to the school level. But there are some pressure actually to the adoption of education decentralization back then. At least there are three pressures at that time. The first one is coming from the international agencies. Tons of reports of education performance around the world had been produced during the 90s, for example, which include the recommendation of decentralization. As you can see in the right screen, there are many publications by the World Bank, the OECD, and the UNESCO about education performance. For example, in Indonesia in 1989, as you can see on the screen, there are some comments on how the education governments were operated. It is stated, for example, that the local education offices were regarded as little more than post boxes for channeling data and reports up and down the bureaucratic ladder. And the second pressure is coming from the academia. Yeah. As the popularity of education decentralization topic increased at that time, yeah, during the 19 and the 2000s, there are many scholarly publications published on education decentralization by that time. I collected from the three academic search engine, from Web Science, Co-host, and Google Scholar. It is just to illustrate how the academic pressure happened at that time. And the last one is the political pressure, and probably in Indonesian context, this is the most important one, because the 2001 education decentralization was part of this political decentralization reform that followed the toppling down of the authoritarian older regime in the late 1990s. And in this period, the idea of democracy and public participation became the legitimating narrative of all the reforms that is going underway. And after the Big Bang, we saw the structural breakdown of education governance. The Ministry of Home Affairs, for example, is now absent from the structure of education governance, leaving only the MOIC and the MORA, but where MORA retained its control over its whole education bureaucracy, because religion was not the sector that is decentralized at that time. The MOIC only held the normative role of making standards and policies to uphold these standards. The traditional Kandep and Kanwil, I just mentioned before, now it's been removed, but the dinas provinsi and kabupaten remain no longer under the Ministry of Home Affairs structure. They are local government apparatus, and schools now belong to local government bureaucracy. Before I move to this part, maybe I just want to add another one, that the schools also had this what we call the school-based management system, which involved parents and other community members to make up the school committee organization. Along with principals and teachers, this new organization was authorized to take part in school management, although in practice their role is limited in like raising extra governmental funds to cover the difference in school budget. And after the decentralization as well, the schools can also do their own planning and budgeting because the funds are transferred directly to the local governments. This direct transfer dominates the proportion of the national education budget each year. As you can see here, it's like 62% of the total education budget is transferred to the local government. However, at least there were 3 problems related to the implementation of education decentralization, as I note. The first one is the rise of a regulatory regime, particularly at the central level, because the Ministry of Education is no longer involved in direct education management. We were focused on making standards and regulation to guide the implementation of the standards. Technically, actually, MOEC doesn't create these standards. The autonomous body, we call it the SNP, does, but the influence of MOEC in this organization is undeniable, I think. Hundreds of regulation has been produced during this period, which has shaped the compliance behavior in the school or in the field at large. Schools and their personnel, to some extent, are spoiled by these guidelines, which hinder them from making creative teaching and other initiatives. And the second one was the emergence of audit culture through evaluation, accreditation, and certification, as stated in the PP on the national standard. On the National Education Standards, number 19, 2005, I think. It has been, but due to the extensive scale of Indonesia education bureaucracy and other reasons, this audit system or this audit culture turns to create less authentic performance report. It has been list-taking activities, learning to evaluation mentality, and with regard to teacher certification, actually in 2017 or 16, I think, the World Bank sarcastically put it as double for nothing, because we pay double to certify teachers, but with little impact on their competence and performance. And the last one is what, as we achieve after decentralization, is the politicization, and it is very popular discussion on this. This politicization has happened because, you know, education personnel made up the biggest proportion of local bureaucrats, as you can see in the chart here. Education resources are seen as political capital to support the rule of legitimacy. Teachers are thrown into political contestation to win positions in school and government administration. And this has led to the waste of trillions of investment the central government has put on education, on making standards and upholding them, because local government can simply evade it when it doesn't meet their interests. But after there are some reform in 2014 to do another structural breakdown on this decentralization. After then, we moved the management of, we divide the management of schools under 2 local government levels, which the senior and vocational secondary schools were controlled by the provincial dinas, and the primary and junior secondary school were under the district dinas, where the central government keep doing the standardization role. And I don't think I have time to discuss about this, but let's move on the, what we have achieved after the decentralization in terms of access. We can see that our access to education is getting better and more equitable, especially at the basic and the secondary level. And but in terms of the student learning outcomes, are yet to show the bright signal. Our performance in international tests like PISA, for instance, kept among the lowest rank. 60 to 70% of our students perform under minimum competence in science, math, and reading. We can see also some learning environment in school we still struggle to improve it. As you can see here about the bullying, the growth mindset, and etc. And also when we look at the regional comparison, we still find some gaps. The average score of students in Jakarta and Yogyakarta, for instance, this is from the UN, the National Examination Report in 2018. The average score of students in Jakarta and Yogyakarta provinces, for instance, overcome the average score of the highest cluster in 10 other provinces, which are mostly located in the eastern part of the country. Also, when we look at the teachers' performance and competence, we also still struggle to improve it. And this is my last presentation about what's next. And actually, before that, I propose that we have 3 waves of education reform in the post-New Order era. The first one is the governance reform, which I just mentioned before about the decentralization, which is more politically oriented. And the second one is the ideals reform, which is oriented on the ethics and upholding the idealist, vision and mission. And the last one is the behavior reform, which is related to practice or praxis. And in terms of the education reform 2.0, what we call it idealist reform, which is based on idealized values like equality, competitiveness, excellence, best practices, for example. And some policy examples in these terms are like we have the Poor Student Scholarship, BSM, Bantuan Siswa Miskin, to uphold the idea of social equality. We also have the zoning system-based school admission to uphold the equality issue, the discrimination, to anti-discrimination student recruitment, something like that. These ideals, and the curriculum reform to improve our competitiveness, and we have also the sekolah rujukan, or we call it reference school, to model the best practice to influence other schools to follow. But we still have, but this kind of reforms will result in what we have seen before in education outcome. Now we initiate what we call it the behavior reform, which is oriented on praxis. We call it the Merdeka Belajar. The reform doesn't change the existing system, but changes the way we run the system. For example, we have the assessment reform. We want to transform the high-stake to low-stake approach of the assessment, separating system from individual assessment and assessing competence, character, and school environment rather than subject mastery. And the curriculum, we also introduce the perception or the perspective of curriculum as a menu rather than a main course, where schools have flexibility to determine which curriculum is relevant to the learning needs of each student. And we also have the systematic approach to school funding, to school operational grant or BOS. And there is also another program, we call it the Guru Penggerak, which transforms the principal mindset from administrative to instructional leadership. And the other one is the Sekolah Penggerak, which promote the from below transformation by empowering schools from all quality spectra to improve themselves and to influence other schools to improve. This kind of reforms are hopefully can deal with our problems of learning outcomes and poor school environment and etc. and problems that we have mentioned before. I think this is the last of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for such an informative presentation, Mr. Samjani. Now I would like to invite our next speaker, Chief of Culture Division of Mantawai Islands Education and Culture Office, West Sumatra, whom will be sharing about education challenges in Mantawai Island, West Sumatra. Please welcome Mr. Laurentius Saruru. Good morning, Mr. Saruru. Oh, you're still mute.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like to say thank you for Mr. Dana Smoro, and everybody in this meeting room. I would like to present about education challenges in Mentawai Island. In fulfill age education standard for era regional autonomy. The geographic of Mantawai Island districts. Mantawai Island Regency is one regency located in province West Sumatra, Indonesia. This district was formed based on Republic Indonesian laws number 49 of 1999. This district consists of 4 main inhabited islands, namely Siberut Islands and Sipora Islands, North Island and South Pagai Island, which are inhabited by the majority of Mantawai tribe. In on, there are several other small islands that are inhabited, but most of other islands are only with coconut tree. Next. You see the indicator of education of Mantawai Islands from 2019-7 until 2019. You see there are 5 educational indicators. From number 1, you see this literacy rate. You can see this number from years 2017 and 2018 and 19. And then expectation of school length, and then average length of school. You can see they are from 5 educational indicators, yeah. And next, you can see this is number 4, gross participation rates from elementary school. This is 116.94, and 2018 127.08 and 117.47. And next number is poor participation rate poor participation rate, you can also combine about elementary school and junior high school. This is you see in this table. So next, achievement of national education standard based of education quality. You are from beginning from 8th standard of national standard. From number 1 is graduated competence standard. In years from 2008 and until 2018, you can see this 4.37, 4.48, and 6.08. And then you come to standard number 2, standard content standard. You can also, this is a average 4 from 2018 until 2016 until 2018. There are 5 standard. You can see this in this table. From this table above, it can be seen that achievement of national education standard in Mantawai, Mantawai Regency has not yet reached the maximum value, number 7, but in general data from the 3 years show an increase. Next, this is a challenge and problem to complete national education standard. From number 1, you can see the geographical condition of Mantawai Islands, cost ice operation cost. You have operation cost because there's a separated of many islands. And the second, regional original revenue budget that still depend on central fund from Jakarta. And number 3, very minimal income locally, and then next, human resources, especially educators, teachers, as education staff are still lacking. Both in terms is number of education qualification. And next, social cultures, community in supporting education development. There are 5 challenges and problems in compliant national education standard. Next, this is a report. There are report of how to fulfill the 8th standard. One, how to optimization of the available budget from the national funds, DAK, lokasi khusus, BOS, and there are the funding sources according to the existing regulation in fulfill to 8th standard. And then second, how to increase participation from the community to access school in fulfills through the school community. And then next, how to collaborating with related parties. Every parties such as community organization, educational foundation, like BUMN. This is improving the quality of education through training activity for trainer and in Mantawai. Next, you have to connect it of Mentalized Smarts. There are 3 three of points. The point one is one of the dasa cita of Mantawai Island region is to create a smart Mantawai generation. You have programmed this, the big program from one. And then next to realize the aspiration of Mantawai community and the local governance of archipelago districts is to implement various programs such as expanded access to educational facility, providing contracts, teachers, and providing scholarship for Mentawai students to continue at a higher level. And next, realizing the establishment of the university in Mentawai Island is pioneering of community academics to diploma 2 collaboration with Lampung Polytechnic. You can see this picture how to prove this our program. Next, next expectation and proposal in how to accelerating to a quality experiment of education in Mentawai Islands. One, in order to accelerate to improvement of quality of education, supporting from the provincial government and the central government is still needed due to regional limitation in development education. And second, Regency has unique and characteristics that are very different from other regencies, cities in West Sumatra. So it is of that a special approach in the management and development education Mentawai Island is highly expected. I think enough our presentation, and thank you. And I will give for Howe Os. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saruruk.
So sorry, my English is not friendly.
Oh, same. Thank you, Mr. Saruruk. We can see that a lot of improvement, yet there are still a lot of challenges to be faced. Our next speaker will be high school teacher from SMAN Negeri 1 Bobotsari, Jawa Tengah, or West Java. Please welcome Mrs. Rahmi Oktarini, whom will be sharing about teacher challenges in Indonesia. Mr. Oktarini, please. You are still mute. Good morning, Mr. Oktarini. Oh, I think there's a technical glitch. Okay. Our next speaker will be delivering about teacher challenges in Indonesia. She is a teacher from SMAN 1 Bobotsari, Jawa Tengah, or West Java. Mrs. Oktarini, are you there? Okay. We are still waiting for Mrs. Oktarini. Just got a technical glitch. Before Mrs. Oktarini, we already have a presentation from Mr. Jamjani from Ministry of Education and Culture, who give a presentation about Indonesia education system, decentralization and outcomes. And then we just had Mr. Saruruk from Education and Culture's Office, West Sumatra, Mantawai Islands. And then now we are waiting for Mrs. Rahmi Oktarini from high school teachers. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you can put your questions to the chat box, or maybe you can raise hand on the panel discussion after we have our keynote speech from Professor Hannes. Okay, I think we have to play some video before we
Seru belajar kebiasaan baru agar selamat selalu, ini panduan untukmu. Mau berangkat cek suhu tubuh dulu, pakai masker selalu. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Yo ayo ayo. Yo ayo ayo. Saat di jalan jaga jarak tubuhmu, jangan gandengan dulu. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Sampai sekolah cuci tanganmu dulu, pakai sabun selalu. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Yo ayo ayo. Yo ayo ayo. Yo ayo ayo. Yo ayo ayo. Dengan temanmu jangan deketan dulu, pakai barang pribadimu. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Pulang sekolah langsung pulang ke rumah, main-main gak usah. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Sampai di rumah bersih-bersih segera, supaya kita bisa jumpa lagi di sekolah. Yo ayo kita bersama saling jaga, agar sehat selamat. Yo oh oh wayo wayo. Seru belajar kebiasaan baru, agar selamat selalu, itu panduan untukmu.
We are still waiting for Mrs. Rahmi to rejoin the session. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to always wash your hand with soap and also use a mask, and then keep the social distance. And then are Mrs. Rahmi already joined?
Halo sahabat Dikbud, di masa kebiasaan baru seperti sekarang ini, ingat selalu pesan ibu.
Keluar rumah kalau penting saja ya nak, ingat untuk selalu 3M. 3M itu mudah dilakukan dan bisa mencegah penyebaran virus corona. Menggunakan masker, mencuci tangan dengan sabun dan air mengalir, menjaga jarak.
Sahabat Dikbud, kalau kamu sayang keluarga, jangan bawa virus ke rumah ya. Ingat pesan ibu, ingat 3M.
Okay.
So yes, we just move.
Yes. Okay. Sorry for the technical glitch. I think we have to move to another session. Now, okay. We are waiting for Mrs. Rahmi. Hello, Mrs. Rahmi. Are you already joined this session? Okay. We just have Mrs. Rahmi. Hello, Mrs. Rahmi. Are you joining this session? Okay. Good morning, Mrs. Rahmi.
Okay, thank you. So sorry for this inconvenience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the honorable speakers, committees, and all the audiences. Thank you for giving me the chance in this program. I'm Rahmi Oktarani, an English teacher, a high school English teacher from Central Java. I'm bringing the topic of teachers' challenges in Indonesia. So let me start from. Okay, sorry, may I share the screen?
Coba lagi, Bu.
Yes, okay. Okay. Sebentar. Oke. Bentar ini. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, for the first overview, I would like to share about the introduction, second teacher's problem and solution, and the last is conclusion. Okay.
Ibu Rahmi, we still can see your presentation.
Oh, okay.
You have to close it first and then reshare. Stop sharing first, Ibu, and then.
Yes, okay. Screen. Oh, okay.
Now we still cannot
see my.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
I think Ms. Badria can help us.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. As we know that teachers as stakeholders play important roles to increase the educational quality of school through process standard to achieve what has been agreed in graduate and content standard. In fact, they face various challenges. And here, next. We know that the quality teacher is one who has a positive effect on student learning and development through a combination of content mastery, command of a broad set of pedagogic skills and communications or interpersonal skills I got from this report in 2017. And then in the implementations in transferring of value and knowledge as a main duty, teachers face various challenges. We know that teachers' problem has a very close correlation with teachers' challenges. For the first, teachers' quality. Second, workload of teachers, large number of students in one class, and then insufficient learning facility and teacher welfare. The government needs to keep socializing all standards of regulation, teachers' qualification and competence to build teachers' self-awareness, to always develop their ability and skills through workshop, education, qualification upgrade, and independent learning to enhance their quality of teaching. From Central Java programs, I got the short course in USQ in 2018, but we know that actually there are so many programs in it, especially for improving the academic qualification. There are scholarships for postgraduate program and doctoral program. Next. In the professional development, we can find learning activities, brainstorming strategies, lesson scaffolding, and scientific approach. So it's really need the teachers' willingness to join the professional development, because there are also so many webinars handled by the government, and it is also applied in the applications of SIMPKB. We can find so many trainings and webinars there. Next. Okay, for the education qualification upgrade, we know the government has already prepared for the scholarship and postgraduate program and also the doctoral program. Next. Okay, the next problem for the teachers, the workload of teachers. Talking about the workload of teachers, teaching hours. You see, I'm an English teacher of senior high school. I got 32 teaching hours. And we know in the regulation of teaching hours or the workload of teachers, Permanent Book number 15 of 2020, fulfillment of the workload of teacher. Actually, the implementation of the workload for 37.5 effective working hours, it is not only for teaching hours, but also for doing all the tasks here. So is it possible for the teacher, especially for me, to do all the workload when I have to teach 32 hours in a week, beside the fulfillment of teachers' workload? Next problem is large number of students. The rule of maximum number of students in classroom is 36 for senior high school, for the high school. And we see it's a challenge for me that I used to use some games for making my students to be engaged in my class because it's too noisy, see? And then I think that it will be ineffective learning process while I'm teaching in my class, doing some games, and then my next door got trouble of my noisy classroom. And here I also use tutorial Sebaya in group, so it can help my students to learn more after learning by me. Next problem will be the school facilities, insufficient school facilities. See, it is the conditions of my school. We got nice classroom, air conditioner, audio facility, LCD, and also the air conditioning. There's also good library, laboratory, school hall, and you see that we are included in the top 1,000 of Indonesian school. But what's about the private and rural school facilities? Do they meet this condition, these facilities, when we do hope that the school can give us the comfortable learning environment? Next. Well, the last thing I should tell you about teacher welfare. The teacher welfare also have a very close motivation to the teacher in doing their main duty, because we know there are differences between state and private school, especially for the wage. In Central Java province, it has reached regional minimum wage limit. But what about the private school? It's all depend on the conditions of their own financial. Well, so the conclusion. I hope that the government can issue some regulations in the effort to improve teachers' quality in various levels and school units. And then there are mutual empowerment policies from local government to support the central government policies. And the last, for me and for all my fellow teachers, we must have strong awareness and commitment internally to learn from those scientific academic teaching forums so they can improve their competence and to fulfill administrative requirements to deserve as professional teacher. That's one from me. Thank you. I hope it will be beneficial for us. I'm Rahmi Oktarini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Thank you, Mrs. Oktarini. We hope there will be a quite effective teachers improvement program from government. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Ari Hanisek from Hoover Institution of Stanford University, California. Thank you.
Well, good morning to everybody.
Morning from Indonesia, Professor Hanisek. And good evening.
I'm quite pleased to be with you. I'm sorry that I can't be physically there, but nobody is physically together these days. So it's a very normal thing.
It is very normal now. We use Zoom and webinar.
The discussions before me, I think, highlight some of the challenges in Indonesia. And what I want to do is, as a way of introducing the idea of the importance of quality and improving student learning, is to talk about the results of this pandemic. We made some estimates of the economic costs of the school closures that you had in Indonesia and that are continuing in many parts of the world. And I want to quickly go over what the estimates are within the context of Indonesia, and then talk a little bit more about improving quality in schools in Indonesia. In questions and answers, we can go into some more detail about how quality might be improved. But let me see if I can share my screen and just give you an overview of issues that face Indonesia, they face the United States, they face all of Europe, they face the world, because the pandemic has led to school closures around the world. So let me share. Oops, that's not what I want.
Yes, we already see it. Please, Miss Professor.
That wasn't quite what I wanted. I don't think I got the right. Here, let me see if I can share the power. I want to share the PowerPoint here, and
yes, we already see the PowerPoint, Professor.
There's what I want to do.
Yeah.
With my colleague Ludger Usman in University of Munich, we tried to, at the end of the summer in August, to estimate the economic impacts from school closures that the world had seen before then. And what you'll see is that our estimates were very optimistic. They were very large, but very optimistic. What we had was universal closures of schools, and largely kids didn't learn anything while they were out of school. There were some attempts in various parts, and I presume in Jakarta, but probably not in other places in Indonesia, to introduce internet instruction and video instruction. It turns out that these were not very effective. And in many parts of the world, most of the attention was focused basically on how do you reopen schools? What do we have to do to make sure that everybody can go back to school safely, and so that nobody is endangered, but we still get the learning? And I think that at the current time, since we're still deeply within the world pandemic, we don't know how much the harm is yet that's going to, we're going to see. But what we're going to try to do is give you what I would call the best case estimates of the losses. And what you'll see is that these are very large. The losses already to students that were closed out of schools last spring and into now are very large. So the one way to look at the losses are what do we expect the income losses to any student who was closed out of schools to be. And what we have from around the world are estimates of how valuable is learning. How much more will you earn in the labor market if you learn more? And there's a range of these. This table across the top talks about different estimates of the value of learning in different countries. We have a pooled estimate from around the world, but the US estimate is one of the highest in the world. It's not as high as Singapore, which is the highest in the world, but the US estimate is quite high compared to other countries. And it turns out that Indonesia, or at least Jakarta, is very close to the United States. So that if you look at the economic losses to individuals, at least in Jakarta, you will find that they're close to the US. The estimates we had in the summer were that the learning losses were essentially equivalent to a third of a year of schooling. And so what that would imply, a third of a year would imply that any student who was in school but closed out of schooling because of the pandemic can expect to have 3% less earnings over his or her entire lifetime. Now, I call this the best case estimate because this all assumes that schools in September went back to exactly where schools were in 2019. But we know that that's not happening. That's not happening in the United States. It's not happening in Indonesia. We're not getting back to exactly where we were in 2019. So that the losses may in fact be equivalent to half a year or even 2/3 of a year of schooling. And then we're talking about maybe 6% lower income for anybody in this cohort of students. And that's a permanent loss unless something changes, unless the schools actually get better than they were in 2019. This group of students has been harmed over their entire working lifetime. That's not the only way to look at this. It's also possible to look at this in terms of what happens to economic growth and the losses to nations. What we know now from a lot of analysis is that the economic growth of a country is closely related to the skills of its labor force. And the skills of its labor force are closely related to the learning that we measure. What we talked about earlier, the discussion earlier, PISA scores, the international test out of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, are actually pretty good indices of the skills that are valued for economic growth. And if we look again at this optimistic case, we see that if students lost a third of a year, equivalent of a third of a year when they were in school, GDP for Indonesia over the remainder of the century would be expected to be 1.5% lower than it would be had we not had the pandemic. In other words, the losses of skills to this entire cohort of students that was closed out of schools turns out to be a huge impact on the future economic well-being of both the individuals and the country of Indonesia or the country of the United States. So again, all of these estimates imply that schools actually are currently and have been back at their 2019 levels, but that's not the case. So you can think of, well, maybe it's closer to 3% lost GDP for the remainder of the century. And that's a big number. That's a big number that really affects the welfare of Indonesian citizens. So that all comes from, in fact, that test scores, PISA scores, are very closely related to economic growth rates. These are countries of the world. I picked out the US, but if we find Indonesia would be here, where there's lower, there will be lower growth because of the lower skills of the population. Now, another way of looking at this is, I'll put this in terms of dollar values to Indonesia. What I have here is all of the G20 countries. I picked out China. China will lose $15 trillion in income if their economy came back immediately, if the students' learning came back. Indonesia in green stands to lose a present value of over $2 trillion if the schools were back in their current, their 2019 level. But it's more likely that the present value is $4 trillion. Now, $4 trillion obviously means a lot. So that's the overview of the cost of the pandemic. But what was brought up in the earlier discussions is that Indonesia faces not only the virus, but it faces a quality problem in schools. The schools in Indonesia are not up to world standards in the sense of competing with OECD countries. And what would it mean? It was said before that according to the PISA scores, somewhere between 60 and 70% of Indonesian 15-year-olds are not up to basic skills in the world. Okay. If somehow over the next 30 years, Indonesian 15-year-olds could be brought up to basic skill levels, which are defined by the PISA scores, the GDP of Indonesia for the remainder of the century would be 14.5% higher than it is today, and what you'd expect with the current quality of schools. So the pandemic is a big deal, but the overall quality of bringing up the quality of Indonesian schools is more important in the long run, and it has a much bigger impact because it means the whole population learns more, and when the whole population learns more, the economy in the future grows faster. So the message is pretty simple. If schools just return to the 2019 levels, it will not erase the losses that students have already suffered. In fact, they will be permanently hurt if, in fact, the schools are not improved over the 2019 levels just from the pandemic. Part of the problem is that we're also losing a lot of information along the way because we're not testing students. We don't know what they're doing. We're not being able to judge where they are very well. And this is going to cause continual management problems. Now, I don't want to sound so pessimistic. It is not inevitable that these losses occur, because we've seen, as we look around the world, that other countries have shown that it's possible to improve. We can look at Portugal, we can look at Poland, we can look at a variety of countries, we can look at Peru, where countries at all different economic levels have shown that they can improve their schools. That's when you start getting the gains I talked about over bringing everybody up to basic skill levels. Now, there's some specific options that may or may not be important for Indonesia, as has been said by the previous speakers and was said by Javier Luque in the introduction. The quality of teaching that students sees is most important. And so one of the ways as we return to schooling and try to do something that combines technology along with classroom teaching is that we want to employ teachers where they're most effective. So what we've seen in the United States, and I'm sure is seen in Indonesia, to the extent that there's any video instruction, Zoom instruction or whatever for students, some teachers are just better at this than others. They're not necessarily the same teachers that are the best at in-person instruction, but some are pretty good at Zoom instruction and others are good at in-person instruction. So one of the obvious things to do as we come out of this pandemic is to try to have the people that are best at Zoom instruction do more Zoom instruction, and the people that are best at in-class instruction do more in-class instruction. And to give, it's something that we've known we should do for some time, to use teachers where they're best able to be effective. And you might have to compensate the teachers that are doing more Zoom instruction or that are doing more high school English instruction, as our previous speaker is. We might compensate her for taking on more students. We might provide her with more support to help her in her class and have her teach more English to students because she's good at it. And that's what we should have done before, but the pandemic makes it more obvious. The second thing that we might do is that as we come back to in-person instruction and so forth, we know that some students really just fell back during the whole closure time, while other students did okay, because there's some parents and some students that are self-motivated and that can do okay on their own, but others fell back. And so what we're seeing around the world is much larger variations in the skills of a class that a class has, that the students have. And so the obvious thing is to do more personalized learning. Have a plan for each student of what they're going to learn, as opposed to insisting that everybody try to learn at the same pace, where we know that's not going to work for the people that are way behind, and it's going to hold back the people that are way ahead. So these are things that we've known in the past that we should be doing. But now, out of the pandemic, it's the only way to get out of the situation that we're in. Thanks. I'll stop there and we can have a discussion. There's a copy of this learning loss on my website or on the OECD website of the overview of learning losses, but maybe we should just stop sharing this and have any questions about what we should do at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for such an insightful presentations. It's very important for us to getting more to know about this pandemic effect and work on it. And dear audiences, please give applause for all the speakers. To conclude the webinar, we will have a panel discussion now, and we have about 30 minutes to discuss. Please just raise hand to ask or share your thoughts and concern to our panelists. And I think we already have 2 questions from YouTube. I guess this is from Twin Arthurs. What are the challenges of education in the future with the virus pandemic that is sweeping the world? I guess I'm gonna give this question to Professor Hannesek. Would you like to answer this question, Prof?
The challenge is that every country in the world, from the United States to Indonesia, sees that we want to do better. And the challenge coming out of this is that how do we take the losses and the setbacks that we've had because of the pandemic and turn them into ways to actually improve the schools for the current students and for the future students. And that's what's, so it's a matter of ensuring that every student has a really good teacher there and that they can learn in a way that's better than we had in 2019.
Yeah. Appreciate. Hello, Professor.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just stop at that point. I think the challenge is one that we've had before the pandemic, but that's just been made a lot worse by the pandemic because schools have been completely disrupted and students have just lost a lot of time that's valuable. It's important to them.
So are we going to more hybrid model of learning, or what do you think, Professor?
I think that there's a good chance that we do go to more hybrid learning in the future, that this has pushed us to try to find ways to integrate technology more effectively. Now, in a country like Indonesia, this is extraordinarily important because you have this highly decentralized system with lots of rural schools that are hard to staff. And in a situation like this, we have to find ways in which we can integrate technology into the classroom and use technology to boost the broad education around the whole country.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I think we have quite clear enough for the first question, and then we move to the second question from YouTube. From Irfan Prasetya, how efficiently we spend the money, that what matters most. I think that's one of the main challenges in BOSS, or School Operational Assistance Fund spending. In what way school personnel efficiently spend their BOSS funding? It must be for the purpose of improving learning, but specifically in what aspect of schooling can we do the efficient BOSS? I think this is a question maybe for Pak Toto and also Pak Irsad Samjani. Pak Irsad, and also maybe Pak Toto. Good.
I'm sorry, Danas.
I will repeat the question, Pak Toto. How efficiently we spend the money, that what matters most. I think that's one of the main challenges in BOSS spending. In what way school personnel efficiently spend their BOSS funding? it must be for the purpose of improving learning, right? But specifically in what aspect of schooling, Pak Toto?
Yeah, first of all, I share a lot of the idea from Professor Hanusek regarding the what matters about money. It's what is important, the quality of spending actually, whether the money, whether it is small or large, is whether it is directed to the right thing. So whether we do the right thing, and the secondly, whether we do things right. In terms of this issue on the budget, yes, we always complaining that okay, we are, although there is guaranteed under the constitution that at least 20% of government budget has to be allocated into education sector, but this statement is not sufficient to guarantee that the quality of spending. Regarding the question of boss, this is only fulfill the portion of the needs of financing for school. I think Irsad have some figure. What is the portion of spending should be will be covered by BOS, by bantuan operation, by that school grant. So to be certain, this is not completely cover all the needs of the school. Okay, this is in terms of the amount of the money that's allocated to school. Not to mention that whether those portion of money is used for the right things or not. Sometimes the problem become compounded. Yes, we know that the money is not enough, but the second problem, the small money is not used properly sometimes. So the knowledge about what is the most effective to improve learning outcome, and it's very, very important. I'll give you example. If we just look at the 8 standard, like Pak Kepala Dinas mentioned, our purpose is to provide, to make sure that every standard is fulfilled. 8 standard is not necessarily every standard have the same importance with respect to their influence to learning outcome. For example, just they put priorities on building, while we need more actually for teachers to improve the qualification of teacher that is believed to be more effective to improve the learning. This kind of I'm not sure this is answer the question. Is it?
What about the ministry regulation that has been more flexible in both spending? And then what do you think about the effect in the, I think.
Yeah. I think recently we have a policy to up to the school to spend money more wisely instead of putting a certain portion. What kind of spending the school should use from the budget. This is because the one that is know best what is needed, it's at the school level, not us at the central government. So there is a danger if we just put strictly, very strictly, what is money is used for. But in fact, the school have a different needs, variety of needs. Then, but what is the most, what is we feel important, that's for a teacher, is part of the regulation that a certain portion, a big portion of money should be directly to improve the quality of
teachers. So it's I think we have an optimistic insight about this flexible, more autonomous both funding and spending to the headmaster, I guess, Pak Totoy?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is optimistic, but there are a lot of things to be done. The knowledge, the awareness, what is important and what is not priority, I think is also a challenge for us.
Still a homework for us. I guess we have a raised hand. I guess we invite from the attendees. Mbak Badria, Ibu Krishna. Okay, let's the committee to open the mic, please. Okay.
Dana, can I jump in? Can I make
a question? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I would like to, following up on your question, I would like to make a couple of questions to Professor Hanushek. And the first one is like, in Indonesia, we have 532 districts and 32...
514 districts.
414 districts and 32 provinces that are in charge of the education system. No, so, of course, that sounds larger than what we see in the US with only 50 states, or in Brazil with, well, Brazil is kind of similar with a lot of states and provinces participating. But the question is like, how would you see, based on your experience in other countries, what may be the right mechanism to make them work together and align? No, I know in the US there have been some programs to try to make a stronger presence of the federal government in the states, trying to align everyone into the same objectives. So what would be your advice to decentralized systems in terms of how things can work together? And the second goes to the question that we're just asking. BOS is a student-based transfer that every student in Indonesia gets. No, it's like a voucher. And the money goes to the school principals, and the school principal have some guidelines on how to use the money, but there's nothing written and prescriptive. No, and so would you suggest having a very prescriptive options on how to use the money, or gives them freedom to use the money as they may think appropriate? No, and of course this relates to issues of school autonomy or district autonomy. No, so this question is like, do we look for a silver bullet on how to spend the money, or do we go to like broader concepts like, oh no, we really need to develop teachers on, and that will mean a lot of things, but with a clear idea of, we can set a standard or what we are aiming at the end. No, so how we are, like, to summarize my questions, how we work together in the decentralized systems, and then is there a silver bullet, or should we aim for a silver bullet, or what might be the silver bullet? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lut. So we also deal with the accountability issue as well for the BOS or School Assistance Fund. Okay, we have a question from the attendee, Mr. Aan from Pearson, Indonesia. You already in highlight, so please use your microphone, Mr. Aan.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for the time, and thank you, Prof. Hanusek, for sharing with us the insightful informations. I'm interested in one of your statements mentioned about not all countries facing the problems quite some times. Like we know, we need to bounce back as soon as possible, because the soonest we come out from these problems, and then the better we got the results later on. You mentioned about some of the countries, like, for example, Portugal and so on. And then what I want to know is how they deal with this pandemic in terms of educations. Maybe we can learn from their case study, and we can try to see and then review from our side and we can see positive things that we can try to apply later on, because like we all know how diverse our country is. We have a lot of districts and states, like Xavier mentioned before, and we have a lot of things that we need to handle. But it's always good to get more information from or case study from different countries, like what you mentioned before. Thank you, Pak Danas Moro.
Thank you, Pak Aan. I think this is for Professor Hanisek.
Sure. Well, let me answer both Javier's question and the last question. I don't think we know, have very good models yet about how to bounce back. It turns out, I thought for a while we could say, well, the Germans knew how to do it. They brought their young students back to in-person instruction fairly quickly and then started phasing in others. And then they had another wave of the pandemic in Germany and ended up closing down their schools again. And so I think that all of the countries are struggling. The examples I gave you of Portugal and Peru and Poland were ones that before the pandemic had shown that it is possible to improve your schools overall, that it's possible to bring PISA scores up by 25 points by doing a variety of things. I think that the example that we have in Portugal is that they introduced very strict accountability standards in their schools, and that those really started to pay off. It turns out that in Portugal and in Indonesia and many countries of the world, schools are dependent upon politics. And so what we saw in Portugal is that a few years ago, the government that had put in the accountability systems and gotten the gains was voted out of office, and the new government immediately did away with most of the accountability system. And I think that Portugal is maybe not a long-term example anymore because of this. This also relates to Javier's questions. If you try to decentralize across your 500 plus districts, the one thing you have to know is whether the districts are doing a good job or not. You can let everybody make their own decisions as long as the decisions are ones that are consistent with students learning more and the schools getting better. But if, the bizarre example would be the headmaster of one of your districts decides to put fancy rugs in all of the offices of the administrators of the schools. Well, they've learned how to spend their money locally in ways that make them happy, but they don't do it in ways that increase the learning of their students. And so ultimately there's no other alternative than to continually look at whether outcomes are getting better, whether students are learning more. And if they aren't learning more in decentralized systems, then you have to have some other way to, in fact, try to enforce better behavior on the schools. So maybe then more centralized regulations come into effect that think of a world where schools are largely free from regulations if they're doing a good job. But if they aren't doing a good job, then you have a set of rules for what the schools have to look like. That relates in part to sort of, I guess, the ability of students to move around with their money and what can be done when their students come with to schools with different money. In the United States, we've had charter schools, which are public schools, but they're allowed a lot of flexibility in the way they operate. What we found is that just paying attention to whether students go to these schools or not is not sufficient. That does not ensure that the schools are doing a good job. And so you also have to have some accountability system that looks at their performance, measures student achievement, and holds schools responsible for their achievement. Now, I'm not sure if I heard this correctly in the prior discussion, but it sounded like one of the plans in Indonesia was to move away from holding people responsible for the test, to make the accountability system sort of low stakes, so nobody's really responsible if in fact students don't learn. I'm not sure that's a good answer. I'm not sure that that's a good solution, because you have to make sure that students do in fact learn, or else that you're in no better shape. So that's sort of my overview of answers to those questions. We might pursue them more if you wish.
Okay, thank you, Professor Handesek. Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Is it a question you need to hear, Pak An, or do you want to add more?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak An. Thank you, Professor Handesek. And then we already have another attendees to share the question or share his thought. Pak Pande Putu Krishna, please to unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay, my name is Krishna, and here I speak as a Gen Z. To be honest, I really want to confirm what my thought in when I'm high schools. I want to address the questions to all the speakers. I realized that teaching school is not a favorite option when we graduate from senior high schools. It means that the teaching school or the teacher major never got the top talent from the high schools. The top talent probably goes to medical schools, engineering, the programmings, and IT. And from the social class, they are going to the economic school, the communication, politics, and the law schools. That's always the pattern when I'm in high schools. So the problem is the teaching school is not going to have the best talent. Is it because the profession is not cool, or the profession can generate much money? I'm asking as a Gen Z. And I think I have validated my opinion from the Bu Rahmi slide that we lack of teachers' quality, and also from the Mr. Laurentius slides that I note that from the 8 national education national standard, the lowest scores is in the teachers and education personnel, which is only 2.7 in 2018. So my question is it really an issue? Or is there any possible policy to resolve the issue? Or do we have to support the education in Indonesia to be a mature industry? Or maybe we don't have to solve it because it's less necessary, or it's not a significant issue. That's my questions. Thanks for the time.
Oh, wow. I think it's a critical issue. Maybe we could start from Mrs. Rahmi, from our teachers. Ibu Rahmi, boleh mungkin menanggapi.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a very good question. So many good questions, because it's a critical in thinking about the senior high school here. Yeah, I got from SimPKB application. The government also share to the students about their response, the idea of the students' idea for being teacher. So just wait for the result from the government. They have just shared it, and okay, I hope that Balitbang maybe can get the result of this study. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Rahmi. And then maybe Pak Javier. Pak Javier, look, would you like to add some?
Oh, sure. And
Krishna.
well, then, of course, then Professor Hanushek and the other speakers can expand. No, but the issue that you mentioned, how we make, I mean, Professor Hanushek was saying, that teachers are the key input, no? And of course, I mean, I have also done some research that, of course, confirms what Professor Hanushek has said, but also that research confirms that it's difficult to increase the quality of the teachers through trainings and masters. I mean, it's really difficult, no? And most evaluations don't provide good results of those efforts. No, so I think the issue is how we create this intrinsic desire of the best to go into teaching. No, of course, how we define the best is also complicated. No, but what we surely observe is like Korea, Singapore, Finland, all the systems that succeed in creating good, I mean, all the good education systems have teachers that are highly, maybe not so much highly paid, but highly regarded as the society of key instruments of change. No, but I'd like to add a little bit on the question and maybe then asking Professor Hanu to follow up, given that Indonesia is going through a very important period of teacher, we have a huge wave of teachers that are retiring. So the country will have to hire new teachers very soon, very large numbers of teachers. So I don't know if other countries have had to go through a situation like this, but what would be advisable? No, like how we hire these large numbers when at the same time we know that the ones that are now at schools were not the top of their class in high school. No, so how we address this issue, no? And yeah, I stop there, but I'm sure maybe, I mean, of course, Professor Hanche will have something else, but also all the other speakers. No?
Yeah, we still lack of 1 million teachers over Indonesia, Pak Javier. Maybe Pak Irsad, before Professor Hansek, I think Pak Irsad Samjani would like to add some to answer Krishna questions.
All right. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, actually, like difficult question, hard question to answer, but yes, teaching school is not a favorable option for like the youngster generation now. Yeah, we agree on that. And actually, the government has done several efforts to make it better by providing, for example, more compensation to teacher through the certification policy. And actually, after this policy, the admission to teacher training institutions like the LPTK, we call it LPTK, or the ex-IKIP universities, kept increase time by time, time to time. Actually, I learned from probably the World Bank report back in 2011 or 12. I forgot the exact publication date, but the report shows that the teacher certification policy has influenced the aspiration of the fresh graduate of the high school to be admitted to the teacher training institution. But yes, the quality remains the problem, as I show on my screen before about the UKAKI score and other teacher performance. And to fix this situation, the reform must be from the up to the downstream. We fix the training institution. For example, now we have the Campus Merdeka policy by the minister. I think we introduce more from this policy. We introduce more more exposure for teacher or for teacher candidate or for university students to the access to more knowledge, to more perspective, and etc. And we also reform the curriculum, and we show the way the teacher should teach their students, the way they should have the freedom to teaching, and the way they should be the facilitator of the student instead of being the instructor. But however, I found many cool teachers out there now. To be honest, with the technology, there are many teachers who, like the young teachers who we are in Balitbang. We frequently met with informants, with respondents from teachers. There are many innovative teachers back then. Maybe the number is not yet as big as we expected, but I think the cool teachers are increasing now. I mean the number and the quality, and we also try to engage teachers with technology to make them cooler, to make them more relevant to the youngster generation. And we in Kemendikbud have some programs to the quality improvement of the in-service teachers in many aspects actually. And yeah, it's a homework, we know it, but I believe we're getting there sometime.
We're getting there. Yeah, somehow. Thank you, Pak Zamjani. So it means that we should promote more Miss Oktarini, Miss Rahmi, as a cool teacher, one of our cool teachers.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them.
Maybe Prof. Hanusek would like to add to answer about Krishna question. Prof. Hanusek.
Let me just give a couple quick responses.
Yeah.
Krishna's observation is absolutely correct. That this is a worldwide situation where other industries look more attractive to many young people deciding what field to go into. It's a problem that's faced in the United States. It's a problem faced in Indonesia. And so it might be better if we could, for schools at least, if we can convince all the doctors that they should be teachers instead of being doctors. I'm not sure if that works out for society as a whole. But even if we did that, I want to make the very simple point that all the doctors are not necessarily going to be good teachers, that there are different skills involved between being a doctor and getting good grades on the exams that allow them to be doctors and actually being in the classrooms and doing well. And so if we look within the classrooms of all of the teachers we have, we know that some of them are just absolutely superb and are doing a great job, and some with exactly the same training, exactly the same school, exactly the same degrees are not doing well at all. They don't do well at teaching. And as long as we fail to recognize that some people are better than others at this job and to try to keep the good ones and not keep the ones that aren't very good at it, we're not going to improve. The only way we can improve is recognizing that we really have to reward and retain and keep the really good teachers. And these are really good teachers that might not have been able to get into medical school, but it turns out that they're extraordinarily good at teaching in the classroom. And these are the people we want to have in the classroom. There are other people that don't do so well in the classroom. But if we keep them in the classroom, their students are going to be hurt, just as if it was a pandemic. You know, there's been a lifetime pandemic around the world of some people get some poor teachers. Think of that as a virus, that they got a poor teacher. Well, it hurts them forever. And so if we don't pay attention to that, we're not going to improve our schools.
I guess that's really insightful answer, Professor. And now, because the time is quite near to the end, I think we have one more question from the agency. Pak Ferdi, can you open your mic? Yes, please. Pak Ferdi, you haven't unmute your mic.
Okay, sorry. Now
please.
You can hear me, Mas Danas Moro?
Nice.
Okay. This is very an insightful presentation from all of the presenter, Mas Danas Moro. Yeah. But I would like to ask two questions actually to the three speakers, which is to Professor Alan Hanusek, and then also Mr. Javier Luque, and then the last is to our teacher, Ms. Rahmi. Yeah. For the first question, we noted that in facing various challenges in the era of the 4.0 industrial revolution, we noted that this is undeniable that the technological conditions are always changing. This is also same with our theme today about the remaining challenge in education. So the high adaptability is needed so that, for example, like teachers or maybe the other practicals in education, they are not out of date. But on the other hand, they are concerned. I think this is for the teacher perspective. Yeah, there is what we call is a replacement duty from what was previously done by the teachers, now taken over by the artificial intelligence. So I would like to correlate the 4.0 industrial revolution also with the issue of artificial intelligence. So in the process of online learning, slowly but surely, such the pattern of this kind of artificial intelligence will move systematically, I think. So I would like to know how should the teacher should be react. The world of education must be ready, I think, to face the era of education 4.0. So this is, of course, related to the e-learning. So there is raise a question. I think also this is in the world today. Can the quality of e-learning be fulfilled as expected? So this question to the Professor Eric, and then also to the Mr. Javier Luque. And then to the Miss Rahmi Oktarini. Miss Rahmi, I think we already noted that there is also not only in remote or underdeveloped area that have not been reached by the internet access. So this is about the infrastructure issue. So during the COVID-19, I think all the students' learning was carried out by online. Yeah. So the effort are still needed so that the education in Indonesia, I think, is truly even distributed. So I would like to know, in your perspective, besides the technology, is there any other factors that need to be improved? Okay. And then, I would like to know what kind of strategy maybe the teacher should be willing to know in related to how to increase their ability to adapt in e-learning for the next couple of years. Then this is very important, I think, to all of us. I think that's all my question. Thank you, Mas Danas Moro.
Thank you, Pak Ferdi. And I would like to add your second question to Pak Laurentius from Mentalized.
The second question is to Mbak Rahmi.
Mbak Rahmi. And then, okay.
The first question is to the others to the Professor Eric and then Mr. Javier. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think Professor Eric could answer the first question from Pak Ferdi.
Sure, I'd be happy to. You know, we've had a great experiment in the introduction of technology in lots of places, because we've taken people out of the classroom and put them directly into online learning. I think that what we're seeing from around the world is that the teacher is still a very important element of learning, and that no matter what the technology we have, or at least all the technologies we've seen so far, still require a teacher to coach and help and to motivate the students and to bring them along, figuring out where they are and so forth. And so I think that the future will in fact have more technology in it, but it will also have teachers in it. They're going to have to be adaptable people, of course, because they're going to have to adjust to a different kind of teaching style and a different role they have. But in fact, that's what education is largely about. It's making people adaptable to different situations. And what we need is highly educated teachers that are adaptable and ready to adjust to different technologies that are there and to figure out how to use them well. So I'll stop there. I know we're short on time, and so let me stop there.
Okay, thank you, Professor. And then Mr. Javier Luque.
I just will emphasize what Professor Heinrich was just saying in terms of adaptability, and how you have to be ready to adapt. I think, and that many people is claiming as a key of this 21st century skills, how you adapt, how you have to change. So, and for that, if we bring that to education system, it usually related to have very good fundamental skills and good social-emotional skills. And I mean, we know that we are getting into a different world, despite COVID, besides COVID, where the way we work, the way we adapt, the way we interact is going to be different. But what we are very clear is that having good fundamental skills is key. And then everything will bring on that. As many people say, we're preparing people to learn how to learn and keep learning through their lifetime.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Javier. And then Mrs. Rahmi to answer the second questions.
I got the questions of beside technology, what should be improved? Okay, well, I believe that by improving our own self-development programs, such like every year on January, we have to prepare our planning for year planning. And one of the point is about the self-improving or self-development program. So at least we must have such training or workshop. So how to increase e-learning here? By participating the e-learning training, because there are also so many e-learning. And we as the teacher followed some of them in the first era of this pandemic. Yeah, that the pandemic just make us realizing that e-learning is so important for us. So we have to at least mastering one of this e-learning, and we can apply this to our student. So yeah, if you stated that some of the teachers are out of date in taking the technology, yes, you're right here, because at the first we just do what we usually do without thinking that technology is important. We can introduce some applications, some websites, some good websites, some good models to be applied in our classroom, to be applied to our students. But this pandemic just waking us up that it's so important to increase our e-learning master. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oktarini. And I think the audiences also wants to know what is Mentalized strategy, Pak Ferdi, to improve their e-learning, especially because they are in quite challenging geographical conditions. Pak Laurentius, can you please add more about your strategy, about Dinas Pendidikan Kabupaten Mentawai strategy to improve the hybrid learning or e-learning? Pak Laurentius.
So I mean, how to prepare the teachers with a number of skills, to use the digital technologies tools, effectively in facilitating the teaching and learning process. So I would like to know the practice in your site, and then what kind of technology and innovation skill, because this is related to the innovation, right? So we would like to know the innovation skills will be provided to the students.
Oh, okay. And we just got heard that Mr. Laurentius already left the room. Yeah. So maybe Mrs. Rahmi, would you like to add more about Pak Ferdi questions? What is your?
Yes, I just share about my experience maybe. In enlarging my e-learning to my students. For example, before the pandemic, I used to use the Google Classroom since 2018, and then I also applied to use Kahoot to make the students feeling fun by playing the games inside the classroom. And for this pandemic, I use Zoom and Microsoft 365, and most of the teacher here use that application. And most of my students can join with this application, but some of the students also cannot join with this because of the
lack of
problem.
access.
I get the problem of their gadget and also the internet access. So we have to visit them, but maybe some of the teachers will visit them, or we invite the students to be at school, but they don't want to be here. So just they visit their relatives or their neighbor to get the internet access. Okay, that's the problem and their solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rahmi. And I think it's more access to open and accessible application, free and accessible application, and also collaboration with the students, I think. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rahmi. And then now I would like to ask Mr. Toto, ask Professor Hanesek to give a closing speech for this session. Professor Hanesek?
Well, I just have a very simple statement, and that is that the future of Indonesia depends upon the quality of its schools. And if Indonesia is to develop and move up to a higher place in the world, it's going to come from, in fact, improving the quality of its schools. This has been made more challenging by the virus, but it's more challenging everywhere in the world. This is a long-term commitment that Indonesia has to make to quality. And in making that quality decision, it's not possible to just look at how much is spent and whether the 20% is spent on schools or whether everybody has a certain device in the classroom. These aren't going to necessarily be solutions. The only way to do this is to look at whether students are learning more and where they're learning more to try to promote that. That's my simple ending statement that I think is the challenge to all of Indonesia.
Yeah, I guess it's really clear for us. It's 20% is not enough, Professor. Thank you, Professor. And then now, once again, I would like to invite Mr. Toto Spraitno to give the closing speech for this session.
I just would like to say thank you so much to special Professor Hanusek for your insightful, for your thought about education in Indonesia, and as well as to Javier, Ibu from SMA 1, Bapak Sari, Bu siapa? Bu siapa, Mas?
Rahmi, Bapak.
Bu Rahmi, there's no name there. And Pak Kepala Dinas Mantawai. This has been very good discussion, but frankly, I'm not so satisfied. Not yet. Is there a possibility that we have more discussion here, especially with the Professor Hanusek, that is thought about education since very much relevant to the policy that we are doing. There's a put emphasis on the learning outcome that we've been so long neglect. That was the real accountability of education, learning outcome. Only recently, when we read the World Bank article from Professor Len Pritchard, the article famous about the schooling without learning, this kind of thing. We see in the quarterly report from the World Bank that lots of investment in our education actually is not going into the classroom to improve learning. So in that sense, we're trying to correct that with appropriate policy. And if time permit, if everything permit, then it should be very interesting to have much more discussion until to the level of workable policy. Okay, once again, thank you so much to everyone coming here, to the speakers that provide very insightful thought about important but difficult issues in education. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay healthy.
Thank you, Pak Toto, for such a remarkable speech. And then we would like to invite you to give a big applause for all our speakers here. Such an inspiring and insightful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we had such a productive and inspiring time together, and this webinar about to come to an end. I hope you found the presentation on this webinar are informative and inspiring. We hope this webinar will be beneficial for all of us. Now, I would like to leave you with a powerful quote from Ki Hajar Dewantara, First Minister of Education. He said, "Everyone becomes a teacher. Every house becomes a school. Education does not stop at school buildings, but also at home, on the street, and elsewhere." Thank you very much. Until we meet again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Namo Buddhaya, Rahayu. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Hanusek.
Thank you, Prof. Hanusek.
Thank you, Professor Hanusek.